Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Rafi Shulman, and I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors. It's just a pleasure being here with you tonight, and it's so exciting to see so many people from around the world that have joined us. I just want to take a moment and introduce you to the wonderful people who are joining us tonight and have agreed to share their insight and their advice with you. So we'll start with Akiva Harris, who's the International Program Manager at Ulpan-Or. Hi. And then we'll move over to Anjali Holzman and Francis Ehrman. Both Anjali and Francis are students, of our clients of ours who have made Aliyah, so they have some really great feedback about the Aliyah process. And Neil Honeycutt, who joined us as well, he's a student of Ulpan-Or, and he will share with you some of his thoughts on the program. So we have over 240 people from around the world, which is amazing when you see so many people who want to learn more about making Aliyah, or learn more about Hebrew, maybe buy a property in Israel. You know, we all want to connect with Israel. This is our homeland, and it's just so amazing that you guys have joined us here tonight. And we really look forward to sharing with you some good feedback, some good advice, and answering your questions. Just a few quick things to keep in mind. First of all, we are going to be recording the webinar. So if you've come late or if you have to leave early, don't worry about it. We'll send out a link probably by Tuesday with a link to the recording so that you can watch it again at your own convenience. And also, please, if you have anybody else that wasn't able to attend tonight, feel free to share it with anybody else who might benefit from this information. We're also going to have the Q&A session at the end of the webinar, like I mentioned. So go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A window, not the chat window, but the Q&A window, and we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end. And last but not least, we will have the contact information for Akiva and for me. And we really encourage you to reach out to us. If you have questions about the Ulpan-Or program or about Olim Advisors or making Aliyah or any other topics that we've talked about, reach out to us. Let's schedule a one-on-one conversation so we can really understand what your concerns are, what your goals are, and how we can help you. Okay. So I just want to start off by just giving you a quick introduction into Olim Advisors. Who are we and why are we putting these webinars? And so if we go back to 2016 when we started, there were so many people who were looking to make Aliyah and just didn't know how to go about the process. They didn't know how to choose the right communities, or they didn't know how to choose schools or how to find a home. And it just were decisions that were really tough to make from abroad. And then when you also look at the next step in the Aliyah process of dealing with bureaucracy in Israel, whether it's opening up a bank account, going to get your Taudat Zehut, your ID card, or getting all your benefits, it's an overwhelming process that a lot of people just felt that they needed help. And last but not least, it's just ongoing support. When you look at the process of making Aliyah and you're moving to a new country, you're moving to a country that has different language, and it's challenging. It's challenging for most of us. And so people are looking for somebody and they need somebody who can really just answer their questions, from the simple questions to the big questions. And that's really the role that we're here, is to help you and guide you through the entire Aliyah process. In addition to that, we also help people who want to buy a home. Maybe you're not looking to make Aliyah right now, or maybe you already live in Israel and you want to buy a home. That process can also be very overwhelming. And so we're here to guide you through the process, to help you find communities and projects, and really to introduce you to a network of people who can help you. So if you're thinking about making Aliyah, if you're thinking about learning Hebrew, or if you're thinking about buying a home in Israel, don't do it alone. Come to us and we will gladly help you. So let's start the presentation and just go over the agenda, the 5 common Aliyah concerns that people have. So the first one is finding the right community. The second one is making sure that you can afford to live in Israel comfortably. The third concern that a lot of people have is finding a job in Israel. The fourth one is making sure that you have the right medical coverage. And the last one is learning Hebrew and adjusting to the culture in Israel. So let's dive into it. So the first concern that a lot of people have is how do you find the right community? And if you have kids, how do you find schools? And so the first piece of advice that we give to people is that focus on finding the community first. And then once you find the community, then find schools. So for example, if you make a list of preferences, maybe you want to live in a community that has more English speakers. Maybe you want to live in a community that is a mix between religious or secular. Maybe you want to live by the beach. Making Aliyah, moving to Israel, is a great opportunity for you to start your life over And so what you should do is make a list of preferences and prioritize those preferences. And once you can zero in, once you can pick the community that you think would be most suitable for you, and if you're coming with kids, then you can start looking for schools. And inevitably, the communities that you find will most likely have schools that provide the support, provide the help for you and for the kids. Another thing that I really encourage you to do is be open-minded and consider all options. And what I mean by that is both for a community and for schools. If you don't have family, for example, and you need to live near them, or if you don't have to live near the center of Israel so that you can go ahead and get a job and commute to work easily, then there are a lot of amazing, amazing communities throughout the country. Maybe they're not the large Anglo bubbles that you've heard of, but it could be an up and coming community, maybe a growing community. Maybe it's a community that just has a mix of everything that you're looking for. And so when you start your search and as you kind of look into it, be open-minded, look at communities that maybe you wouldn't have considered, maybe you wouldn't have heard of. And the same thing applies to schools. A lot of kids, especially when they're older, they will hop on a bus and they will travel for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour to get to the school that's most suitable for them. So that's something you should definitely keep in mind when you're looking for communities and schools. The next thing to keep in mind is that you need to have a budget, right? You really need to keep in mind what you can afford, whether it's to rent or to buy, right? It's something that can really dictate where you want to live, right? If you want to live in Yerushalayim, but you can't afford to live in Yerushalayim, then it doesn't make sense to look there. And the last thing is to do a pilot trip, right? It's great to do online research and it's great to talk to people and get a sense of what's available. But the most important thing that really, will give you a true sense of the options and what's suitable for you is to come to Israel, come for a week, come for 2 weeks, travel around, go check out the schools, meet people, talk to people, and really get a sense of what's suitable for you. With that, actually, I want to pause for a moment and hand it over to Anjali and to Francis. And I wanted to get your thoughts on your experience and your challenges. Some of it might be related to finding communities in schools, but there are probably other challenges that you have as well. So, Anjali, why don't you start and talk about your challenges and what you did to overcome them?
Yeah, so for schooling, my kids were actually very little when we first came. So they went straight into Gan, and luckily because it gave me some time to figure it out before they had to go straight in. But what we found was that if you can, you basically you have to you don't have to put yourself in a box, but you have to put yourself in a box. You have to figure out what the boxes are and what you like closely relate to. And then you have to figure out, for us, we are both Balchuvas, we didn't grow up with anything, so we can't supplement Rashi, like whatever, we don't know. I can supplement science, that's my background, so I can do a chugim with my kids or learn with my kids, that's how I supplement. And actually, when we moved from Beit Shemesh to Carmiel, the school here is actually, I think, more religious than we would like, but we need to lean that way because I can't supplement that way. I can only supplement the other. So that was something that, we had to decide how we were going to go about that. But it's working. It's fine. It's easier to go from like a more religious school to like less than the other way around, we found, for kids and parents. So that's with the schooling and just, reaching out for any type of help you need when it comes to schools and community, WhatsApp groups. And, I just befriended my neighbors and anybody who could possibly give me any insights on anything. That's honestly what helped the most, was having community and just befriending whoever you live near, whoever. I mean, even in Beit Shemesh, you can befriend anybody on the street, really, but
Right. I agree. There's so many resources that are available from Facebook groups, and Nefesh B'Nefesh has a lot of information on their website. And definitely take advantage of that. And don't be embarrassed to reach out to people and ask for help. And once you crack that ice, once you have a few friends and you meet a few people, they will introduce you to other people. And of course, when it comes to school, it's so important to do that as well, and just to ask for help when you need it, and you will find that people are more than happy to help everybody. Thank you so much. Fran, what about you? Your situation is a little different. Can you just describe where you came from, where you're living, and what your situation is like?
Sure. So my kids came way before me. They came as adults, young adults, and we followed. I still have somebody in the United States as well. We live in Netanya. I'm retired. My husband is still working part-time, and a big challenge for us was the Aliyah application process. We're citizens of both Canada and the United States. We had to do certain things double, and the process was pretty tedious and labor intensive. Nefesh B'Nefesh was there to help us, but give yourself a lot of time, more time than you think you need, because, you know, it just takes a lot of time. Nefesh B'Nefesh also has fairs in various places. I suggest you go to the fairs. We had our interview at the fair. We met other people who were making Aliyah as well and discussed our challenges. Another challenge we faced before we moved was downsizing and clearing out a house. We had a 3-story house and we were moving into a 2-bedroom apartment. Took a lot of ingenuity. We had 2 months to do that. Not only did I have all of my stuff for 50 years, I had my mother's things when she passed away. She had her mother's things. I had my kids' things. And I never really threw out very much. So I suggest that you start with areas that are not you're emotionally invested in. I started with my cookbooks. I had 2 shelves of cookbooks, and the first time I went through them, I said, okay, I'm just going to get rid of 1 shelf of cookbooks, half of them. And that's what I did. I went around the house. I went into the bathroom. I had 4 shelves. I said, okay, half the stuff is going. I'm going to be left with 2 shelves. One of my major rules was, when in doubt, throw it out. I did not want to clutter up the apartment. I believe now in the philosophy that less is more, and I'm thrilled that I even have space. I have a few empty shelves still in this apartment. Vietnam Vets was terrific. We gave things to Gamach. We advertised on Facebook. Very hard to sell things. Nobody wants your old stuff. It was even hard to give it away. And all the organizations have various rules about picking up things, that some won't go upstairs, some won't, you know. So really make the calls early and figure out how you're going to get rid of your stuff. In terms of after Aliyah, there are 2 areas that I'll touch upon. We thought we were done. You know, we thought, okay, we made Aliyah, we did the application forms, that's it, we're here. No, we didn't realize that we have to do tons of things after you move. You know, there's all kinds of offices that you have to go to, and we had to pay certain taxes and get a license, et cetera, et cetera. Using the phone was difficult. My husband is fluent in Hebrew, thank goodness, and he can do it. I'm not. If you're not pretty fluent in Hebrew, the calls and the telephone is difficult to maneuver. I'm putting in a plug here. Rafi, you don't know it, but Olim advisors were fantastic for us. They made all the phone calls. They came to pick us up. They brought us to the place that we had to go to. Half of the buildings here don't have addresses, so we wouldn't be able to find them on our own. And then even within the building, if it's a government building, finding the office in the building was difficult. So we were brought right to where we had to go. We signed whatever papers we had to sign, and we were brought home. It was really helpful. I have 2 daughters here, and both of them said, well, why are you hiring a company? You have 2 daughters here. Guess what? I call my daughters, they barely answer the phone. They're both working, they both have families. Thank goodness I didn't rely on them. And lastly, it's the metric system. I don't know about you, but I'm challenged in terms of numbers, and everything is different. You know, the lengths, converting meters to feet, converting kilos to pounds, you know, shekels to dollars. You know, I go into stores and things are like 100 shekels, but I think in terms of $100. What really helped me was going into my notes on my phone, and I have shekels to dollars. So I wrote down, you know, 20 shekels, 50 shekels, 100 shekels, and what each of them is. So when I see a price, I can look at my phone and, okay, it's about this price. And the same thing with, you know, kilos to pounds. When I go to the cheese counter, to the meat counter, and I have to figure out how much I need of something, my phone and all that information really comes in very, very helpful. And I just want to say that I'm happy, and we're really adjusting nicely. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Fran. Thanks so much, Anjali. Okay, we'll go on to the next topic, and that's the financial side of it. And as you heard from Anjali and from Fran, you know, there's a lot of wonderful elements to living in Israel for yourselves, for your kids, but you have to make sure that you can live here comfortably. And it's an important exercise that you need to go through. What I recommend and what I tell people is that one of the first things you should do when you're thinking about making Aliyah is put together a budget. And if you need help with it, let me know. There's actually a really helpful Nefesh B'Nefesh budget, a sample budget that they've put together that can give you a rough estimate of how much things cost. It gives you a range. And of course, it depends on your lifestyle, right? For example, if you buy 2 cars versus 1 car, if you use public transportation versus buying a car, if you go out a lot, there's definitely ways to lower your expenses. And I think it's really important that when you look at your lifestyle, wherever you're coming from, and you think about your lifestyle in Israel, it's going to be different. It's not going to necessarily be worse or better, but it's going to be different. And a big part of it is the financial side of it. And what I would recommend that you do is really, think hard about how you can lower your expenses to make sure that you're not in a situation where you're financially stressed, because that's the last thing you want to do. The last thing you want to do is come from, you make Aliyah and then live in Israel and not knowing if you're going to be able to make ends meet. On the other side of the equation, you also need to estimate your earnings, right? And there's a number of ways you can do it, and I'll talk about finding a job in a moment, but it's an important part of it because very often, if you're going to work in Israel, the salaries are a lot lower from what is being paid outside of Israel. And so you need to have a really good understanding of what the earning potential is in Israel and adjust your budget accordingly, right? If you're going to be taking a pay cut, then you really need to make sure that your expenses are in line so that you're living within your means. And the last point here is really for people who are semi-retired or retired. And we see a lot of people who are moving to Israel. In the past, they would move to Florida or they'd move to other parts of the States, or they would retire in the UK, South Africa. And now a lot of them are moving to Israel, retiring to Israel because their family is here, because the quality of life, because the weather. And a lot of people are looking for something to do. And so what I encourage people to do is see if you can find part-time work or consulting. It could be with a company, could be with a nonprofit organization, just something for you to keep busy, both mentally and physically. And also, if you can generate some extra income, it can only help. It can only help with your financial situation. So definitely keep these in mind, and make sure that you have a rough budget in mind before you make Aliyah. So we talked about finding a job, and for many people, this is a very critical decision. And there's a few pieces of advice that I want to share with you. First of all, you have to think about whether or not you want to continue a career, if you're a teacher, a lawyer, an accountant, a plumber, whatever it might be. Or maybe you want to take advantage of the opportunity. You move into a new country. Maybe you want to reinvent yourself. Maybe you want to get involved in something that you've always wanted to do, but never had the time or really the push to do it. So this is a great time to think and say, okay, you know what, maybe I'm going to leave my career behind and start something new. And that decision will really drive a lot of what you do, a lot of the research and the legwork that you put into finding a job. If you decide, or once you decide what industry you want to focus on, or again, it could be nonprofit, it could be different organizations, do research to find companies that are in the news or organizations that are in the news. There are so many successful companies and organizations that are doing amazing things, And if you can focus on those, zero on those, and try and find an opportunity within those companies, it just sets you up for success. So there's a lot of easy ways to do research beforehand. You could be going on to just Google company names, or you can look at their company's websites. There's a number of ways to do research into industries and companies to identify the opportunities. The next thing that I encourage you to do is to network before you make Aliyah. Now, keep in mind, most companies don't hire before you make Aliyah because they want to make sure that you're going to come, right? So many people say, sure, for sure, I'm going to be there. I'll be there in 6 months. Things happen, life happens, and people change their mind and don't end up making Aliyah. And so companies want to make sure that you're on that plane, that you're here before they hire you. Not all companies, not all organizations, but predominantly most of them do. But what you can do beforehand is you can start networking. So reach out, go on LinkedIn, connect with people, and just reach out to them and say, look, I'm thinking about making Aliyah. I'm interested in this space. I'm interested in your company. Can we just schedule some time to chat, to talk? And you'll find that people are so open and so willing to share their advice. You just listen and hear and talk. And so that's a really effective way of also shortcutting your job search once you get to Israel. And then once you get to Israel, keep in mind, there's a very compelling stat that I heard a while ago that approximately 80% of positions are filled through referrals. That means that companies looking to hire somebody, they'll turn to their employees, they'll ask the employees to reach out to their network, and they will fill a job through the network. And so if you're looking for a position, whether a company or an organization, try and connect with somebody who already works for that organization or for that company, and let them pass on your CV, on your resume. It will greatly increase your likelihood of success. Okay, and the last topic for me is healthcare coverage, making sure that you have the right medical coverage. And so just as a quick overview, there are 4 HMOs, or 4 Kupat Olim in Israel. They're all governed by the government, regulated by the government. And so they all provide a very similar level of service and then very similar benefits, whether it's medication, subsidized medication, alternative medicine. So you can't go wrong. The question is, how do you pick the right one? And the first thing that I tell people is, if you have pre-existing medical conditions and you need to see a specialist, first find these specialists, and then find out which kupa, which network they belong to, and then join that kupa. If you don't have to see a specialist, then what I would recommend that you do is reach out to people who live in the city that you're going to move to, or in the neighborhood that you're going to move to, and just find out which kupa has more doctors who speak your language, whether it's English, Spanish, German, French, whatever it might be. You want to make sure that there are enough doctors so that you feel comfortable talking to them and seeing them. And then the last point here is you really need to decide which level of coverage you want. Each kupa offers multiple levels of coverage, and usually the difference between each one is minimal. It could be a couple hundred shekel difference. So you want to look at the different levels of coverage to make sure that you're getting the right coverage. And if you want, or if you need, there's also an option of going private, getting private insurance to make sure that you have quick access to doctors and coverage that might not be offered by the Kupat Cholim. So these are some of the main concerns that a lot of people who are thinking about making Aliyah, either in the near future or down the road, are thinking about or concerned about. And again, I want to encourage you to reach out to us. Let's talk about it. If you have other questions, other concerns, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. And the last concern, and at this point I'm going to hand it over to Akiva, is learning Hebrew and adjusting to the culture in Israel. And this is where Ulpan-Or, which is one of the leading Ulpan programs in Israel, has been doing for many years. And with that, Akiva, I'll hand it over to you.
Toda rabba, Rafi. Thank you very much. I'll share my screen. Okay.
Let me stop my sharing 1 second. Oh, it worked.
See. Okay. So, you see my screen?
Yeah, perfect. It works.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, Anjali and Francis, for sharing this story. Interesting and very important things you said. So I want to share with you about learning Hebrew. Okay, and more important, being able to speak Hebrew, and how does it work and what do we do? So we are Ulpan-Or, the founders, you know, they founded like 30 years ago. We have Hebrew programs for all ages and levels with the emphasis to become conversational in a very short time. And that's very important to emphasize that you want to be able to speak the language, understand the language, to carry conversations, not only read or write without understanding what you do. So basic questions. Why learn Hebrew? So you could say it's very. We all know why it's important to learn Hebrew if you want to come to Israel. But for example, we had a student once that he lived in Efrat 20 years, and then he decided to come learn Hebrew with us. So I asked him, why now? He was 55. Why now? He lives in Efrat. He can manage in Israel in English. Okay, y'all can manage. It depends where you live, but in most places you can manage in Israel in English. So why learn Hebrew? So in his story, his daughter was engaged to an Israeli a young man, and his parents didn't speak English. Sorry. So there he found himself now only 55. He was regretting why he didn't do it earlier when it's easier to learn Hebrew when you're younger. But basically, the idea is that you can manage in Israel in English, but if you want to live full life, so English won't be enough. Different services, like we just heard, it could be doctor, health funds, banks, the mail, every place you go, you want to be able bureaucracy. So you can enjoy Olim advisors that it could help you, especially in the beginning. But again, something that you want to be able to do and to be independent. The news is something that you could. It's also it's more levels of being part of Israel, being Israeli, and to experience Israel in all levels. If you have kids that are going to schools, so there you want to be able to communicate with the teachers, understand the diploma they get, to understand the tests, the homeworks, and even if you won't get to a level that you can solve everything, but just to have some kind of understanding, so you could even know what to ask when you need help. And I would say, and the last part is humor, to understand the culture, to understand the nuances, to be part of the society, not to feel that you're like a guest or a tourist here and observe from the outside, but to be part of the Israeli society, to be full Israeli. So that's in Hebrew. And now the question, why now? What do I mean when I ask why now? You didn't make Aliyah yet, right? You're most of you probably in the States, different places in the world. Why now? Well, why not wait? When you make Aliyah, you get the Ulpan, you can get Ulpan and it's free. So why not wait? So you can answer that in many ways, but basically now when you make Aliyah, you'll have many things to concern about, and a lot of pressure and things, and moving and finding and living in a new place, a new culture, a new community, new people, new job, new everything, new doctors, new different services. So now, before you make Aliyah, if you're able to learn Hebrew, just will be easier for you. The entire process just will be easier. It's also if you want to find a job, if you come like Rafi said before, right? You want to have different connection before, but if you come here, then already you're able to communicate. That's will help you find a job faster. And then again, if you want to, everything, you'll have more time if you to come here. And remember that basically learning a language is exactly like going to the gym. You need to start to building your muscles and then practice. And the more you practice, before Aliyah, you'll come here more in better fitness, right? So you could always improve. You could come, for example, you could learn before Aliyah, going from one level to the other. Then you can join the Ulpan, the government Ulpan, when you come here to even improve your Hebrew. But don't wait for it until to start. Don't wait for it if you want to be part of the society as fast as possible. Now I want to pause for a second. If you can share with us in the Q&A box who here already have tried to learn Hebrew, and what were the challenges that you encounter while you try to learn Hebrew. I'll give you, like, let's say, take 20 seconds for you to type your answers. And you could think about the Hebrew school you had when you're younger, or maybe older, different experiences. of trying to learn? Okay, thank you for your answers. So you could see, so let's see. Okay, so it's still, people saying it's still hard to understand the news. That's for no, knowing words, masculine and feminine, numbers, lack of vocabulary, different answers. That's all, all great answers. Basically, you try frustration from difficulties and expressing to use your Hebrew. Many of you would say have Hebrew in a passive level. That's much better than their active level. You learn, the people that learn 10 years in Hebrew school, then they try to buy a falafel and they haven't, it's too hard to do it, right? It's something that it's harder to go from the passive to active, to learn by yourself. So sometimes no feedback. You can learn with different apps, but then you just learn words and words and words. But you want to be able to have a conversation. That's something that's hard to do. Confidence. We know that confidence is one of the, as well as sometimes we have it too much. It's something that could be a very big barrier to be able to speak a language if we're afraid. It's part of it. Many here, maybe outside, you could be a very expert. You could be a very high expertise in you to be an engineer, a great teacher, very important doctor or a bank, anything you do. But then when you start to learn Hebrew, you hit the aleph, right? You grade one from the beginning, and that's not the best feeling, I would say, to be a beginner level when you're much more than that in different aspects of your life. So those are the challenges. But the good news that you're not the only one. Many people here, maybe it's something that we know. Facing Hebrew, like we heard also from Francis here, and it's to go through all the things that were just presented as challenges of making Aliyah, and also I see all the questions here of things that people wrote at the website of where's the benefits of taxes that you get when you get, and the website is only in Hebrew. Those exact things that in language, it's not only in order to be able to survive. It's something that's able, if you want to live here, you need, the language barrier, you find it every time after time. So you're not the only one basically facing it. So that's, like I say, it's a one level of good news. But the better news are that we have a method that's developed already to overcome these challenges. So how does it work? So I'll share with you shortly how our method works.
Es amiga. Es amiga. Esta es mi amiga. Ok. Esta es mi amiga. Muy amiga. Ok.
So here, only the founder, she went to hotel, tried to speak Spanish with the person that works there, and basically you could see from the video what Nelson Mandela says. If you talk to a person in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. I don't know who here was already in Machne Yehuda Shuk. Just imagine that you go to a person there, and two sentences, just say Mashlumcha. He answers that, and then he could go on even to go to English, but he encourages him to help you speak the language when he sees that you make the effort to speak his language, and to connect and to know your neighbors and to feel that you're, again, part of the society. So how does it work? So what you need to, in order to, the way we work is our lessons and our method is basically, it's based on the idea that Hebrew lesson needs to be like learning how to ride a bicycle, and that's the way it works. That it's a process, right? And gradual learning and training goes up and better and better. Repetitions, very, very important. Something that you need to learn again and again. That's how we learn the vocabulary, learn the structure of sentences, learn everything is by repetition, repeating the different conversations, motivation. Very important to enjoy the process and not feel like to learn in a very dry way. That would help you. Confidence, we talked about. Practice. Francis, you mentioned not to wait to your daughters. Many people have, okay, I have a brother-in-law, I have a son-in-law that speaks Hebrew, I'll talk to them. You need someone that has patience, has the time to help you really practice and learn Hebrew. The same goes with playing the piano, swimming, dancing, all the things that we want our body to learn. That's how we need to learn the language. You need to practice. You need to be the one that speaks Hebrew, not the teacher, not your partner, but you need to speak Hebrew. And so basically, if I could summarize, the best way to succeed in speaking Hebrew quickly is to speak Hebrew from the very beginning and practice using it. Like, you don't wait until you get to, you know 30 words, then you start to speak. No, you learn 2 words, you start to speak with them. And that's our entire method works and that. I want to stop for now, and I want to introduce you with Neil. He's a student of ours that made Aliyah. And Neil, if you could share your experience. You have the question, but feel free to just share your experience of how was it to learn Hebrew, what were the challenges, and what was your level, and how does it, and what did you achieve?
Sure. Thank you, Akiva. Thanks for having me on. And I'll just probably by my name, most of you could tell I did not grow up Jewish, and I've in fact, haven't fully converted yet. I guess I'm kind of in the process. But my wife, she grew up in Ness Ziona, which, for those of you who know, is a town just south of Rishon. And one of her goals was for our family and our 2 kids to really have that connection with Israel that she feels, and that she kind of I guess inherited from her family, and she wanted our family to spend time in Israel and to spend at least a year, and we've kind of done the first year, and we're going back for another year. So I'm not really a regular Aliyah, I guess you'd call it, but certainly somebody who spent a lot of time in Israel and knew I was going to be doing that. And that was the real genesis of us starting with Ulpan-Or. And when I started, I knew absolutely nothing. I guess I maybe heard some words in synagogue, and so kind of do some words, but didn't really know any sort of any meaning attached to them necessarily. I had to learn the alphabet from scratch, so I didn't have the benefit of Hebrew school as a young Talmid. So it was really truly starting from scratch at age, I guess I was 44 at the time. So you can do it if it's a challenge. I'm sure you can make it happen. And just to piggyback on what Akiva was saying, that I think the key for me for success was number one, staying engaged with it for a long period of time, trying to do something every day, even if it's only just for, if it's 5 minutes, if it's 10 minutes, like just to do something where you're reading the language, speaking the language, improving your vocabulary. That level of commitment you'll find will help you rise quickly. And so I said I started at the level of an absolute beginner, and by the time right before we moved to Israel, I had just finished sort of the future tenses. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I can understand everything everybody says on the news, and I can understand everything everybody says in conversation. Certainly wasn't there, but I could understand a lot, and I can. It's still a learning process. There's plenty of slang things that you'll learn that you don't necessarily pick up, but it's what kind of tools did I acquire? Look, the process that Akiva talked about, where you are truly you're almost learning scripts, right? Like how do I go get a coffee? And even I experienced this in my time, because in America you're sort of used to like the standard questions of like what size, and if you go to Starbucks it's a certain sizes, and you can talk about the different kinds of milk, and and it took me a minute to recognize that they were asking me, well, what kind of milk do you want? And of course, just regular. But it's that learning script, and I think most things you'll find that most of those like basic interactions do follow that script, and you do feel extremely accomplished when you can have those conversations. You make a basic purchase. I can we ask for a chetzi kilo of uf or something like that, right? To take home from the butcher. And it's those kinds of tools to be able to get through those interactions is great. And those are kinds of things I think you do learn with Ulpan-Or, because you're forced to talk. And Akiva had mentioned this. Look, if you can read and write, that's one thing, but unless somebody's making you talk and making you engage in the listening comprehension and trying to respond on your toes and quickly, you're just not going to have that skill unless you practice it. So that's where the rubber meets the road, in my opinion. I'm not going to say specifically about how it helped in an Aliyah process, but I think I gave you some pointers on how did it help in a day-to-day kind of activities. I will say, one of the benefits that Akiva mentioned was sort of just feeling connected to the people. And I think, especially for me as somebody who doesn't present as obviously Jewish, when I break out with a little Hebrew, like people are like, oh, like, okay, there's just a level of trust and knowledge that okay, like you're committed to Israelis and understanding our culture, and it's a great thing. I guess learning experience with Ulpan, I had a number of different Olim, different teachers over the couple of years that I studied prior to being in Israel. I would say they all had different strengths and weaknesses, just the same way you would expect from any group. But it's nice to have to have different teachers, because honestly that helps you or I guess prevents you from sort of keying in on the way one person talks, right? And so then you're sort of forced to go, okay, this person has a slightly different way of phrasing things, or slightly different accents that I need to become attuned to. So I think it opens you up to a broader sort of a broader palette of listening and learning. But again, the method is great. I'll say too, like there's a lot of cultural pieces that are incorporated into the Ulpan-Or method. When I said like different songs and things that are all like still very popular songs today that you'll hear, like if you're at a beach cafe, I still hear plenty of these songs all the time. And I've become like kind of a serious hardcore fan of one of the singers that I was introduced to through Ulpan-Or. So it's I've got them on my iPhone playlist and listen to it quite often. So it's great stuff. Probably where I felt most satisfied and just sort of moved by my knowledge of Hebrew recently was actually on the day there was the hostage rescue. It was obviously a big deal within Israel. I'd been on the beach that morning and came back and actually heard from a store clerk that you had the TV on. He's like, oh, I think that they're going to release they've rescued some hostages. We went home, turned on the TV in Hebrew, and one of the newscasters just took a moment to, in a really non-newscaster fast Hebrew way or Israeli way, but in a very like slowly enunciated and heartfelt way, just delivered a very nice testament to the IDF and his gratitude that these hostages have been rescued. And for me to understand that as he was speaking, it really moved me, and I felt really gratified that I could understand what he was saying. So, and and again, I really thank Ulpan-Or for the great great teaching that I've had, and I do think that the success and feeling of connectedness to Israel that I've had is very much their doing.
Wow, Neil, thank you for sharing. תודה רבה.
Pleasure.
Oh, no, you got Neil emotion now. תודה רבה. Wow. Okay, so if we could summarize, and the idea. So actually, we don't need to summarize. Basically, is I think it's very clear. But we do know that you don't have time. It's not easy. You need to dedicate time and resources. So we do want you to succeed. So we have a course that's designed for people that it's very flexible. It's short. It's very efficient that you can access. It's a 10-week course. But it's very, very important. For example, so if you see 15 minutes practice per day is much more efficient than learning 3 hours twice a week. So it's something that it's very, very efficient. Like if you have a daily practice, access to the course materials, everything is online. You get make you progress on your own pace, and you get feedback from our teachers, doing real feedback from real teachers to make sure you progress and enjoy. There's a limited time offer for you, for all the participants of this webinar. You get a $50 off and the course, and that's a special price. And you have I'll send you the link. You get the link in order to be able to purchase if you're interested. And thank you. And Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim. It's exciting to speak to people that think of making Aliyah. And even if you don't work with us, we do mamash all the success. And we say Behatzlacha. We Israel, we felt the support during the war, and thank you for that too. And wish you all the success to make Aliyah. It's not simple, but I think in the long term you'll be happy you did it.
Great, thank you so much, Akiva, and thank you, Neil. Really appreciate your advice and inspiring words. I just want to share our contact information, and we're going to now move on to the Q&A session. So let me just bring that up here. Can everyone see the page is showing up with the contact information?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, good. So I just want to echo what Neil and what Akiva said in terms of learning Hebrew. And I think it's one of the things that you can do that can make a huge difference in your klita and your acclimation to Israel. I think a lot of people come, as Neil mentioned, a lot of people come to Israel without having that background, without having the language. And it's something that you can pick up relatively quickly. You don't have to be fluent. You don't have to have perfect Hebrew. But if you have the basic Hebrew, as both Neil and Akiva mentioned, it gives you an opportunity to connect with people, to understand people, to connect with them and communicate. And so I really want to encourage you. And Anjali, I just wanted to ask you a question about this, because you also said you didn't have the background of the Jewish day schools. And so you had to kind of pick it up. What's your advice for people who are coming to Israel who don't have, the Hebrew? What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, I came knowing like 3 words, and you end up understanding a lot more than you can say. That goes for pretty much everybody I know. And what helped me, I think, I did an Ulpan, not the state one, but the like a 3 times a week one. And it helped me get up to at least where I can understand what people are saying, order at restaurants. That's the most important thing to me. And order coffee, things like that. But you just have to be, at least for me, I have to be forced into the situation to do it, because we live in a Ramat Beit Shemesh for so long that I was not really forced to speak Hebrew ever. And we moved to Carmiel, and now I find we've been here 6 months and my Hebrew is way better. So definitely finding somebody you can practice with, even if it's like a neighbor. They want to work, everybody wants to work on their English for some reason. All the Israelis I meet, they're like, no, I have to speak English. I'm like, no, you don't. I live here. So, yeah, definitely. I'm trying to speak with my neighbor, actually. She speaks English very well. She says she doesn't, but she does. And we try to converse, she speaks in English and then I speak back to her in Hebrew, but whatever. It's slow going because I don't have much time. But definitely another weird thing that helped me is when I'm driving, I try to read the words on like signs and trucks and see if I can make it out because none of those have vowels. So good luck. And a lot of them are in English, but they're in Hebrew. So it's very confusing. But that's something that helped me. And then, yeah, I mean, real life situations have really helped me. And, being forced to talk as much as possible. That's honestly what's helped me the most.
Great, thank you. I just noticed with the Ulpan-Or's email address, the correct one is just office@ulpan-or.org. So there's a typo here. It's not ulpan-or.org. It's just office@ulpan-or.org. So just keep that in mind. There's a question here, which I think is a very valid question that probably is in a lot of people's minds about the timing of making Aliyah. As we all know, it's a challenging time living in Israel now. There's a war going on. And the person asked, should they come now or wait? And while there are people that are making Aliyah now, and it's amazing and inspiring to see, I can understand why people would want to wait. And I think we all believe, we all hope, we all pray that things will calm down again, life will return to normal. And I'm a firm believer that it's just a matter of time before it does. And so what we recommend, and I'm sure Akiva would agree, is that start the process. The process takes time. It takes time to make Aliyah, to submit all your documents. It takes time to learn Hebrew. So let's say if you start now, it might take you 6 months, maybe a little longer to get everything in order to get here. So start the process and then take advantage of the resources and follow the advice that we're giving you. Start learning Hebrew, start planning your Aliyah, start doing the research, and then please God, by the time you're approved and you're on the plane, things will be back to normal here.
I also want to add that it's as you say in investments, right? You can't time the market, right? It's not something a person can do. So there's always reasons why to make Aliyah now, or reasons not to make Aliyah now. I think people that make Aliyah now, so all the war situation obviously is the why not to, but also many beautiful things happen during this time, and even I know a person that it was a better time to buy an apartment because like he found a better deal. There is much more support in the community now because people are more togetherness. So I'm not saying make Aliyah now, but as Rafi said, for sure start the process. Like don't be limited by the process, but then when you're able to, then you could time yourself whenever it's comfortable and convenient.
Right. And the real estate is actually an interesting point that Akiva brought up because most people in the real estate industry believe that once the war ends, there'll be a rush of people, a big spike in demand from people who want to buy in Israel that will make Aliyah and want to buy. And so if you're looking to buy something now in the near future, take advantage of kind of the lull in the market. And especially if you're looking to buy a new project, a new property that might not be ready for a year to two, it can give you an opportunity to buy something or invest in something now and then realize the upside once the war's over, and then there's more interest, more demand for real estate in Israel. Let's just skim through some of the questions here.
So Rafi, I see that a lot of people ask regarding the Hebrew, that saying that it's very hard to find someone to practice with. That's the and that is a challenge. So I think first of all, so the program we just offered, so you have the solution for that, but also after that, if you're you put yourself in a place that you're able to practice, and you have also you feel that have the confidence and you have the skills, so then also be easier to find that neighbor that Angeli just said. But don't wait to get to Carmiel, because when you get there, hopefully, so you'll be able to. But you could always improve. But as Neil said, if the more advanced you learn, so just smoother the process will be. And then you could also you not be limited to specific areas that only have people that speak English, because also it's more expensive, but also, but say, it could be all over. You could live up north, down south, Yerushalayim, although any place that you like the place, not because if you are able to speak and connect to people.
And then there's a question here, actually two related questions. One is for somebody who's retired. Do you have special programs because people who are retired have more time, more flexibility? And then also there's a question here about Ulpan for professions, whether it's a medical profession or other professions. Do you have specific programs for retirees and for people who want to really kind of immerse themselves in language that's relevant to their profession?
So the answers are yes and yes. For retirees, the basic is this: the people that retire want it. Sometimes they want it slower, sometimes they want it faster. The idea that the course is adjusted and adapts to your specific rhythm. So whenever you pace, so whenever it works, your hair work on your own pace. Regarding the part of the profession, so that's from specific level again. And people don't have, like Neil, for example, when he was an absolute beginner, so you can't talk about professions yet, because you need to be able to communicate in the basics, and to be able, like Angela said, to go to buy coffee and able to fix your wheel if it has your tire. But then when you get to a good enough level, like you have the basics, then from there, you could focus on more specific, if you're a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. But I would say that even there, the more that your language is, the better your language is in general, not specific. It will be just easier then for you when if you then engineer to be specific, so it'll be easier for you to get there. But the foundations those are most important.
Okay, great. And there's a question here, and I think it ties also to Ulpan-Or about people that are coming back and forth. Some people have the misconception that if you make Aliyah, it's a one-way ticket and you can't go back and forth. And a lot of people do, whether it's people that are going back and forth for their business or family or whatever the case may be. And so you have the flexibility you have from the Israeli government. There's no law that stipulates that you can't go back. There are certain laws that will look at how long you've been in Israel, and if you've been here too long, if you're out of the country too long, it might impact your healthcare, maybe have some tax implications. But people go back and forth all the time, and that's the advantage of doing things online. There's advantages to going into a course in person and sitting with the teacher. But Ulpan-Or, I think, and as recognize that doing things online also gives people that flexibility. So you could start a program with them, and then maybe you have to go back to the States for a few weeks. You can continue, doing it online. And so I think it's something to keep in mind, because there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, people want to have the flexibility, and you can definitely do that.
Exactly correct.
There's a question here, and we'll maybe go through a couple more questions as we're running out of time. A question about starting the Aliyah process and then having to pause it. And again, it goes back to what I just said about the uncertainty. You can start your Aliyah process, and then if you feel that the time's not right, you can, tell the Jewish agency or tell Nefesh B'Nefesh that you are going to pause it, and then you can renew the application when you're ready. So you don't have to start from the beginning. Fran, I had a question for you actually here about the time beforehand. I think you said, for a couple of months beforehand, you started decluttering. How far in advance did you start planning for your Aliyah?
The process took us, I would say, about a year altogether. Why I mentioned 2 months of decluttering was because we sold our house in March and we had to move out and close by May. So it had nothing to do with, anything in terms of Aliyah. It had to do with in terms of selling our house. But the process took us about a year, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a good time frame to keep in mind. Okay, I think we've kind of gotten to the end. I don't want to keep anyone who needs to leave, but there are a lot of great questions here that we would gladly talk to you about and really go into the details and answer them. So reach out to myself, reach out to Akiva. let's schedule those one-on-one conversations. And I
Okay,
think the most
people are
important,
asking for the links, so we're gonna make sure we're gonna send the links for you able to have all the information you need.
okay, great. Yeah, and the email that we'll send out, the recording will also include the link for Ulpan-Or, so you have all that at your fingertips. We'll also include our contact information. And I think the common denominator here, I think what we all really strongly believe in is seeing, going through this journey at whatever stage you're at, really seeing it through. Living in Israel is an amazing country for everybody, right? All walks of life, learning Hebrew and the connection that you have to Israel. Even if you're not looking to make Aliyah and you want to have the connection, then, there's opportunities to do that. And we want to, really encourage you to go through the process and to, complete the process. And if we can be a part in that process and helping any way that we can, we'll gladly do so. So it was a pleasure having you here. We want to wish you a good week, a safe week. Thank you so much, and be well, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.